Hello, everybody. This is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. Alright, so feedback is immensely important. Feel free to reach out to me. The best way to do that is two ways. You can reach me through email and then YouTube. Okay, so I'm on a lot of different platforms, so it will not be hard to find me. Alright, so on to the topic of choice here. Now, it has been a lot of stuff going on in the headlines about, Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, and the drama had been about everything. So what I'm going to do here is simply give my thoughts about that and then give my thoughts from my perspective and break it down to you. So here we go. All right, so what is it? This has been this is a buzz term that is thrown around a lot here. The aspects of conservative, with it, signing the aspects of a person who's not really conservative. They're just a talking head, talking figure. They're just what do you call it? Like a grifter. So let me tell you what I think and how I feel from my point of view, from my conservative point of view here. So what I'm actually saying about my conservative point of view is from this traditional aspects of the value and the importance that a family brings to first off to the culture and society, which I see playing a major part in the aspects of what's going on with Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds situation. And then I'm going to go on and talk about the aspects of the movie that she was in, and the lawsuits and the allegations here. And then, and that's pretty much how I'm seeing these things. So first, I'm going to just talk in depth a lot about what I think and how I feel about it from my point of view. Okay, so, as I mentioned before, I was lucky enough to be a kid to grow up in the 90s, a 90s kid, true form. And so, when the 90s was going about, it was really weird, really strange, even though it was a lot of incredible things going on as far as the aspects of movies, music, fashion, and what have you. There was a lot of different agendas that were being pushed, subtly being pushed. But, now it's really up there and foremost in the arena. So what do I mean by this? As even in sitcoms, it was being pushed. And it was, different in the 2000s. But it was still, circled itself back to the same ideas. All right, so in the 90s, it was this whole thing where, hey, I am woman, hear me roar. From the back in the 70s of Helen Reddy's song. And so this feminist, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have aspirations and wanting to be, very prominent in your field. That's great. But when you force feed an agenda that is, detrimental to that process, then I see issues with that. And I saw these things for the most part very early on. I was lucky enough to, really put the pieces together like slowly at a time. And this is what I mean by this. So, TGIF was a very prominent thing in my household. I'm telling you what, I look forward to looking at it. It was really a big thing. And so Now, Ryan Reynolds was on the latter part of TGIF, when I was introduced to his comedic style when he was in Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place. And I thought that show was really interesting at the time. Because, there was a lot of different shows. And that were some good, some bad. But it was, it was a mixed bag of stuff that was really, 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 pronounced as, major hits, right? And so when Ryan Reynolds was in Two Guys, Girls, and a Pizza Place, it was a really interesting comedy. Even though as it went along, it went with the same tropes. And then seeing this as seeing it as a kid, you're like, oh well, I'm just gonna talk about it from my point of view. It takes a whole lot of work because Ryan Reynolds, even though he's like in the grand scheme of things, he's still, not ass over the hill. He's still in, he's still in his prime because he's a man. But at the same time, it takes a lot of discipline and dedication to look as well as he does, for a man of his age. And so, with that being said, that's why I was, I channel surfing. That's why I stopped, because I saw him. It's like, he's very good looking. And so, that's for the fourth point. And then, hey, even better, he's funny. And so that's what was really neat about a lot of stuff that was going on at the time. There was a lot of stuff where male roles, or sometimes, in association with female roles, but predominantly male men, I'm sorry, male figures, male roles in television and film. They couldn't have the reign to be attractive and classically good looking, but at the same time goofballs, right? And so Ryan Reynolds, it was mixed all that, and he made that work a lot for him. So there's that, right? And so going back to my point of view here, when I said about my conservative point of view, I didn't really buy into this whole thing where, getting back to everything, I didn't really buy into this whole thing where, I'm woman, I'm going to be, this is what this is now, this girl boss, I'm gonna, man don't mean anything, blah, 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 rah, she, rah, Oprah, yeah, Jet, Sally, Jesse, yeah, and then to a lesser extent, but unfortunately, Ricky Lake. See, all of these ideologies were really surfacing themselves a lot when it comes to television, and then when it comes to the arena thought process about men and women and the disposition and relationships and all these kind of things here. Okay, so there's that, right? Now with Blake Lively, she me and her are the same age. If I'm not mistaken, we are the same age here. And so, we grew up and were coming about at the time we're in a more pronounced, in the 90s, but more pronounced in the 2000s. So the 2000s was the time where, you get this Yaya sisterhood, and then she was a part of the traveling pants thing, which is not my cup of tea, because I don't know that, I'm not really interested in the aspects of this whole thing of, girly, bubbly, existential perspectives about life. It's a little, I don't know, it's a little too fake for me. It's just not my cup of tea. And then, when she was in Gossip Girl and, all these other things, and I think she was in this movie called Accepted or something like that. I'm trying to think about everything. It really, it cultivated a certain persona about her character, right? Good or bad, it did. And so, when eventually they became, a couple and then it became husband and wife, it kind of made sense because of her disposition and his disposition about the, good looking people who, happen to be funny. It made a lot of sense, right? At least to me. And so now with everything that's going on as far as the drama unfolding, and all these people having, a lot of negative things to say, it's quite interesting. So, simply put, this is what I think is really going on with it. And this is what I think falls short a lot of times when people have, gossip columns, like the Wendy Williams of the world, or the Star News of the world, or the TMZs of the world, right? They fall short of actually, which that's the meal ticket, because a really prime example of this is what I learned, and which I already knew, for the most part before, I was taking journalism classes to heighten my communication degree that I was pursuing. Right, so there's this old saying in the journalism. Is this dog bites a man. There's no news in that, right? Whatever, boring, blah. Let's move on. But when the man bites the dog, hey, you got something interesting going on. Now, why is this prevalent and why is this important? How does this relate to the aspects of what's going on with Ryan Reynolds and this drama? I think a lot of the times it's very honest to say that this stuff that gets souped up, for good or bad, is this whole idea, hey, let's find this doghead baby and make it a story and turn it into a story and turn it into something that's not there. Simply put, I think that's what's going on. And so why am I saying that? Now, it's really odd too on the surface level. Like, they say, oh, well, Ryan Reynolds, he used to be married to Scarlett Johansson, right? And they use that example. And I've seen other people who've had their span about this, saying, oh, well, he was saying early on he had a jerk ass attitude, or he's a jerky person, he's a this, he's a that. And the same thing, assorted thing with Blake Lively. She's a this, she's a B word, and to in so many words, that's what it is. But I think, and then some I just can't remember her name, but she is two YouTubers. I can't remember their name, but to a lesser extent, they're saying like he's a monster and he's a this. That's a little far-fetched when you don't really know the facts of the situation of what's going on with the legal battle and the legal issue where that Blake Lively is going about with. And this is all stemming from the movie, and I'll get into more details about the facts of the movie and that stuff. Well, the movie that she was in, and it all spanned, and it is even more ridiculous because some gossip journalists. Well, I wouldn't say journalists. Well, content creators or what have you. In my arena here, pulling up old interviews or whatever. And it's really tricky about that too, in the aspects of where that, for a lesser extent, good or bad, when it comes to communication and media. The process of media imagery, images can be altered or skewed in order to be presented in from someone's favor in a certain light. So what do I mean by this? Making her seem like she's just vain or narcissistic, right? When, most of the clips that was presented were taken out of context. Now, nobody is perfect, right? Of course, right? I mean, everybody has their moments, and I'm sure this is the same case. Same case on the other hand of that with Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. But I don't know. You can't just discredit these people just because you have a certain agenda to pursue or to say, because you just have something fixated in your mind that's not there. So this is my point leading on to this too. Simply put, I think people don't know how to really process that they're a prominent Hollywood couple who are actually trying to do the best that they can to have a solid marriage and have a stable relationship, even though they are a part of the issues that can unfortunately be stirred up when it comes to entertainment and the influence of entertainment in our culture and the influence that it has to do with people, who are impressionable to, accept it as, the golden ticket and to being a successful or happy person. Like, that's Hollywood has all the answers for these things, when that's just it's Hollywood for to really, in honesty, is all about the smoke and mirrors, like the perception of reality. And so when you see people at the forefront that disengage from that and that bend that reality to where, hey, we want some normalcy in our life. We don't want to be this typical, vapid, idiotic vegetable of a, when I mean by vegetable of a person, really vegetable of a person, not vestibule, but vegetable of a person is that, getting on a platform, talking about these really complicated things or political issues or whatever, that's something that's not really black and white. Most of the things that go on in politics, or most of the things that are really, harsh, hard, social issues, they're not straightforward, and it takes a lot of time and understanding and patience and a lot of solutions and perspectives to figure it out, And it's just simply say, I think this because I am affluent, so you better listen to me. They're not, most of the time they don't do things like that. Both of them, Blake Lively and, Ryan Reynolds, it's very, it's very announced that they're supporting each other, or they stay back and kind of stay in their own lane, And I really think that's what's wrong and why people are just attacking them so viciously, because, this is really true. This is really what's going on. There's another case in point here, and then I'll get into, my thought process about, Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds and his disposition with that. So, now I've said, I believe her name is Shanice, or now it's one of those things, like, if you're an adult, if you agree with somebody, you agree with somebody, but you also state the points where you don't agree with them, and you say why. Now, for all the good qualities that she has on her channel on YouTube, this whole thing with everything, with the attitude, with Ryan Reynolds, even with the some of the topics that she has, I don't really, I don't know. It seems odd to me. And then, when you get in the aspects of gossip and everything, it can get really ugly and nasty. So what do I say about this? Like, she was talking about this whole thing where Blake Lively, if I'm not mistaken, was being nominated to be Woman of the Year or something like that for Time Magazine, right? And it was out of the aspects that she was doing for NAACP or something like this, right? And so everybody has their opinion about, whether she's deserving of it or not. But, I'm sorry. I think I'm pronouncing her name right. I'm sorry. But, this lady, Denise or Sherry Day, Denise, I'm sorry. It's hard for me to remember her name. On her channel, she was saying this whole thing where she was talking about how, before they got married, her and Ryan Reynolds, they wanted to have their wedding or their reception or something or whatever like that at a predominantly known plantation. And so it was this whole thing where she was talking about they were paying a lot of money and feeling guilty or something like that. And it was like, well, when you look at it trying to paint that as a bad thing, they could have said, who gives a F, and just went like, whatever, I'm the da-da-da, and not even cared about it, and not even cared enough to give money to NAACP because of this. And it's just odd, these little things are odd, how, they're expunging and call themselves exposing stuff when it's taken away from, the issues that they're facing legally, and it's hard enough to go through that, and this whole thing. So let me get to Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds in his disposition. Now, I think that was really good on Ryan Reynolds to say to put his foot in the sand and say, hey, we're not crossing the line when it comes to Wolverine, when it comes to a lot of things. I want Deadpool is not going to bend the knee just because, the studio wants to push this liberal bent agenda that is very polarizing in the reality of the situation of viewerships and people go out and buy a ticket to see the movie and the box office ratings about a certain film and the buzz and notoriety about a certain film. So he said, hey, we're gonna, if I have my hand in it, you let me have my hand in it. We're gonna stay true to the characterization of Deadpool. And so he really showcased that even more so enough when it came to the Deadpool and Wolverine movie. He said, because they were crossing, trying to do this subversion thing or counterculture thing where, him and Wolverine are embracing each other, trying to make it seem like it's a bromance, this romantic bromance. But in reality, they're trying to put this, LGBT agendas into it. And so, there's another example where he's like, well, you know what? Look, hey, that's not what this is about. That's not what I'm about. I'm not going to just, fall at the sword because of how the pushback that you think that you want things to be. Or if it comes to me getting my credibility destroyed, what have you. There's another example too. I'll say, okay, so with that said, I'm just going to simply wrap up here. Right? And I'm going to talk about everything here. Okay, so I'm going to say briefly and just, end with a brief of it. Okay? All right, so Now, it ends with us, okay? Now, it ends with us, right? It was a romantic comedy, right? That from a best-selling novel, and which I knew that. And so it was released in 2024. Now, Blake Lively it stars Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. So the film follows Liv Bloom Lively, who opens up a flower shop in Boston and enters a relationship with a neurosurgeon, Raul Kincaid, which is Baldoni, only to face domestic abuse and difficult choices. Now, the director and the film was directed by Justin Baldoni, who also stars in it, right? So, what is the controversy? All right, so first off, it started out with this. Now I'm gonna give the rundown and rap about it. So, I saw some of the interview, but I'm not gonna say that I saw the whole interview. But for the most part, from what I saw, was this, that they were asking her. They said, what is your viewpoint about domestic violence? Now, instead of saying some fake crap or saying, "Oh, I know a friend who knows a friend," or no, she didn't go that route. She just said, "I don't know anything of it," but she started going into her beauty line. And so that caused a lot of controversy to start out with. So I'm going to wrap up and say more stuff about it. So fans, excuse me, fans criticized Blake Lively for promoting the film as a rom-com or focusing on fashion and her hair care line, rather than highlighting the serious themes of domestic violence. No alleged cast rift. Now, reports indicate a fractured team during post-production, with rumors two different cuts on the film, and a notable absence of Justin Baldoni in her group promotional activities with the rest of the cast. No on-set misconduct allegations. No reports surfaced regarding creative clashes and alleged disturbing behavior on set, leading to legal actions between Lively and Baldoni in late 2024. So a judge reportedly dismissed some of these claims as early as 2026. Now, romanticizing abuse. So both the book and the film have been criticized for presenting a narrative that some readers feel romanticizes abusive relationships rather than simply highlighting the danger, despite the author's intent to honor her own experience with escaping abuse. Controversial promotion. So early marketing of a coloring book based on the novel was canceled after backlash that it was inappropriate to trivialize a book about domestic violence. Okay, so here's my thought process here. Now, just about Downey and Blake Lively, the lawsuit between them, from what I understand, it was a whole lot of thing where it was saying that pretty much a rift between the vision in which things were going about, the film, and it was this whole thing where they were alleging and saying, that Piper, I'm still in the van, honey. They were alleging and saying that Ryan Reynolds, had his hand in changing the script, and this whole thing with that, from what I understand, right? What I choose to go into the rabbit hole with. If you know what I'm referring to, you know what I'm talking about. And so it was this whole thing where they were saying, well, Ryan Reynolds is controlling. He's being this, he's being that, right? And also at the same time, you heard what I just read, right? Now the book is supposed to be highlighting the fact of someone going on and escaping abuse. Now, I can account for this because, unfortunately, now this is something that's very personal to me, but it's relatable into the situation. I grew up and domestic abuse. My from parental abuse from my dad, and all of everything else assorted with that. And then that's why my parents split. Now my mom is not a perfect person, and it was a whole lot of things with her with different sort of like emotional trauma that was going on between me and her. But anyway, I understand what that is. And so when you take, me personally, having unfortunately experienced something like that at such a young age, I personally know what it's like to have the strength to say, I don't want this to be a part of me anymore. I want to move on to something different. I know that there's more to life than this. I know that I want more out of life than this. And so that's supposed to be the whole point of the book too. And so for Blake Lively, and for the book, and for the sake of it, yes, okay, on the other side of it, it might have been in poor taste to have a coloring book. I mean, I don't know what that's about. I don't really understand that. Then, that's one thing. And then this whole thing where you can see it from this point of view, from Blake Lively's point of view. It's awkward to feel like you have to be put in a position to say and speak on something where you have no understanding, you have no reflection, you just don't understand that world. And she took the initiative to, say, I don't know. Or she might have been, sarcastic about it, because, I can imagine that, being in entertainment, being in the limelight for so many years, you get jaded to where you're like, oh, another person pushing me to be say something, vocal point on something I have no say on. So I'm just gonna do this. Maybe this, get them off my back. Maybe this will cause some controversy. That's something to think about that too. So with this said, I would like to know what you all think. Feel free to reach out to me. And the best way to do that is personally. Well, first foremost through email, and then to YouTube. Personally, I think email is the best way to reach me, because I can get to you, with a quicker turnaround. I can get to you, but I appreciate both methods. But feel free to reach out to me, because I really appreciate all of you listening to me, and I really value all your opinion, all of your opinion. So don't be shy. Just don't hesitate to reach out. All right. With that said, this reaches the end of the Harvey Night. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care out there. Bye bye for now.